A lot more to come again when it comes to BKV and this IPO as we look to wrap up September and as we look to wrap up the third quarter as well. I do want to bring in Caleb Silver, Investopedia editor-in-chief, joining me now to talk all things market and, of course, this IPO market as well. Caleb, thanks for being here.
Happy to be here. Finally, an IPO. It's been a minute.
It's great to see an IPO. We, of course, see the signage for BKV behind us here above the trading floor, and we'll be making our way down there soon. When it comes to IPOs, usually the summer is a quieter month, of course, or time period that is. September, we can see a pickup in activity. For investors watching, how should they consider their opportunities when it comes to these public offerings?
Yeah, IPOs are exciting because you finally have a company going public for the first time, making its shares available to the public. Big deal for the company, big deal for shareholders or potential shareholders that want to buy it. But you have to do the same due diligence as an individual investor as these big institutions do when they're evaluating these companies. What's the balance sheet look like? What's the competitive landscape? How strong is this company in its area? This is a natural gas producer we're talking about here. They do operate in two of the most important parts of the country for natural gas, the Marcellus Shale, the Barnett Shale, as you mentioned. But how's the balance sheet? Who's backing the company? And what do its prospects look like going forward? But also, we're talking about a company here that produces natural gas. There's a commodity involved here, so its fortunes are very much tied to the price of natural gas, that commodity.
Okay, very good to know. And speaking of volatility, September has been a better month than I think some expected.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, of course, buoyed by this interest rate cut that we saw just last week. How do you anticipate that that will impact overall market volatility and market conditions?
Yeah, September and October are typically very volatile, and the beginning of September was no different than that. August was pretty volatile too, but the Federal Reserve has been very clear that they are on a new recalibration regime of lowering interest rates. We got a big cut last week. We're probably going to get one or two more by the end of this year. So rates are going down. That opens up all types of possibilities for investors, especially when you look at the equity risk premium, right? Stocks might look a little bit more attractive as interest rates go down because yields are falling, but it also opens up the door to mergers and acquisitions, initial public offerings, takeovers. You get more activity in the capital markets when rates are lower, and you get this surge in the stock market. And we've had new all-time highs several times in the last couple of weeks. More all-time highs usually beget more all-time highs.
That's right, and we see stocks set to open higher across the board. Technology names set to lead the pack today with those record highs very palpable. How are investors feeling? What's their sentiment now as we look to wrap up the third quarter?
Yeah, well, we just wrapped up our individual investor sentiment survey. We do one every 2 months. We've been doing this before the pandemic just to get a sense of how people are feeling, especially our readers who are individual investors. These are retail investors like you and me, putting money to work and looking for opportunity, and they are as bullish as they've been in 12 months. More bulls than a Garth Brooks concert here right now among individual investors. And when you see so many investors so bullish, you got to worry a little bit sometimes, like, what are we missing? If everybody's so optimistic, what are we missing? Right now, I think everybody's optimistic about the fact that there are lower rates, corporate earnings are growing. The thing that most investors are worried about, or the thing that a lot of us are worried about, the election, not necessarily the result, but the chaos and the civic unrest that could come with it, because we've seen that before. I think people are a little bit worried about that, but they're no longer worried about inflation as they used to be. They're no longer worried about the Fed. In fact, they support what the Fed has done. So individual investors are feeling pretty good right now.
Okay, well, that's good to know. And in terms of whether or not that's a contrarian indicator, how do we usually see markets perform when investor sentiment is as high as it is?
Yeah, I mean, usually markets go higher, but some people used to say, hey, when everybody's so bullish, there's got to be a bear out there that's right. And eventually the bear's all right, because markets don't go up in a straight line. That said, when you think about this thing we like to call the relentless bid, every 2 weeks a lot of us are just putting money in our 401ks, our IRAs, or our retirement accounts. We're not thinking too much about, is it September, is it volatile, is there IPOs coming? We're just thinking consistency. When you get that kind of consistency with a tailwind of lower interest rates, that's pretty good for investors, and we've seen a lot of record highs. We'll probably see some more.